It's time for Windows Weekly, episode 141. Coming up in just a bit, Paul introduces a new feature, the Windows 7 feature of the week. He reviews the new Windows Home Server and his look at the iDud. Windows Weekly is next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, episode 141 for January 29th, 2010. iPaul. Windows Weekly is brought to you by GoToAssist Express, the easy way to provide instant tech support to your customers remotely. Support smarter with GoToAssist Express. For a free 30-day trial, go to gotoassist.com/Windows. And by Audible.com. To download a free audiobook of your choice, go to audible.com/Windows. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show that covers all the Microsoft stuff. And here he is, Mr. Paul Thurrott, the super site for Windows, news director of Windows IT Pro, the author-in-chief of Windows 7 Secrets, and the guy I said last week in a premature, I must say, summary that the guy who would be hosting iPad Weekly this week, but I guess not.
It's not happening.
We thought last week we may not have to do any more Windows shows. It would be all over.
Who's we? Who's this mythical we?
Me being the royal we.
Royal we?
Yes, me. Okay, I was drunk.
Well, the royal we has been proven to be a royal weenie.
I was drunk on the Kool-Aid. I don't see, in fact, on this rundown.
Yep.
I kind of admire, really, this rundown.
Do you?
Right at the beginning, it says imperative.
Yeah.
That we do not mention the iPad even once.
Right.
Yeah. It says that in yellow. It says that right at the top.
It was highlighted.
It's highlighted. Imperative. And I've failed you already.
Yeah, it's okay.
My only excuse is that it was scrolled up, and I didn't see it.
Sure.
Now that I've scrolled down again, it's because I've gone back to the '80s with this Logitech trackball
rolling mouse thing.
Yeah.
It's not even a mouse. It's the opposite of a mouse.
It's an upside down mouse.
It's it's like someone who was born with their organs on the outside.
I've been there.
Tragic, actually.
You mean your organs are on the inside?
On the outside.
Yours are on the inside?
No. I'm sorry.
That's sad.
Yeah, normally the mouse ball is on the inside.
Yeah.
Now that you have the ball on the outside.
I have my ball on the outside.
This conversation is careening.
It's going very down. Look, I could detach it, though, and it goes right in.
Of course you can. You can actually throw that at somebody.
That's why I got it.
Yeah,
it's like
you can be like, Dane, why did we buy all these mice? And then you just throw it at them.
I bought 3 of them. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm running out of real estate on the desk here. I've got 5 mice on the desk. And
there's a solution to this problem.
A trackball, right?
I was going to say a bigger office.
Oh, that too. But now I've got a bigger problem because I've got wires everywhere.
Colleen described for me the insane kind of master and commander setup she has for her computer. I mean, It seems like you deserve and possibly, I hate to use the word need, but almost need something like that as well.
Colleen, who's our director of engineering here, had a custom desk designed fabricated out of industrial grade steel. And because she's doing the 3-monitor thing, the iFinity 3-monitor thing, and so she's got, I don't know if it's 330s, I think it might be, given her proclivity for screen real estate. And
you literally would have to swivel as if at a tennis game to watch the thing move from screen to screen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, but you're right, because what I have is a desk that is not real, but a reproduction of something probably George III had. Made out
Parallels are endless.
Which, the syphilis or the revolution? I'm not sure which.
Like I said, endless.
Endless. So I'm sitting at this, but I do have 14 computers arrayed around me, just to do what we do on the network. So you're right. Is
it really warm where you sit?
Do I look a little sweaty?
I don't know. I'm just saying, with all those computers, it seems like it would be.
Yeah. It's brightening up.
Yeah, and plus you got lights on you, and
yeah.
You really kind of live in a fish bubble over there.
I do. A hot bubble.
Fishbowl.
It's a fishbowl that's actually on a heating element.
Yes. Right.
But we are going to go to her custom fabricator. They're designing our new studio desk.
Nice.
That's going to make Keith Olbermann jealous. That's my goal.
Yes, there you go. And that's what we need is an intro. You know, with the camera swooping down and...
Which 5 stories will you be talking about today? Windows 7 feature of the week. Windows Home Server. Zune update. Microsoft reveals Office 2010 requirements. And nowhere. Do you really want to do this show without mentioning the you-know-what?
Leo, I think that we're going to follow a natural course and we're going to get there.
Okay.
As you will soon discover.
Okay, so I'm going... Paul, you are endlessly amusing, I must say. So story 1...
Okay. Oh, let me explain the story before we get to that.
Yes, go ahead.
I've been thinking about this for a while now. You know, one of the things I do with my own site, the super site for Windows, is I look at technology that's coming down the road. The problem is once that technology kind of hits and is available publicly, I lose interest in it.
Right.
You know, but I know that a lot of... Yeah. So, you know, that's sort of the nature of what I do. But I know that people still write me about Windows XP every single day. I get the occasional Windows 2000 email, if you can believe that.
Yeah, no, we and that's really true. That one of the big hazards of being a technology journalist is this, you know, incessant desire for the new.
Right. You lose sight
of reality.
What people are really doing, So I'm not going to go back and start supporting Windows XP again. But, you know, I think it's important that, in the show especially, that we, you know, remember that people are still moving to Windows 7. It's still new to them. So I thought what I could do is every week we would highlight one of the features in Windows 7, and then eventually we'll run out of features or they'll ship Windows 8. You know, I don't know. So we'll see how far it goes.
I don't know.
There may be some repetition here, or there will be some repetition. I'm sure we covered a bunch of this stuff a year ago or a year and a half ago, whenever it was. You know, who knows? But now that people actually have Windows 7, I think it will be more meaningful to them. So I'm going to do a feature each week on the podcast. It will be short, and then also a Windows 7 tip. And then I'm going to collect the tips on a tips page on my site as well. So we'll get those. We'll get those going.
This is what I like about you, Paul. Somebody, you know, normal person would reach your stature in the world and would just kind of sit and coast. But
my stature?
Yeah.
No.
But you are always, you know, for just a couple of weeks ago, Paul's email bag.
Yeah.
And now this. You're constantly on a quest to improve.
He's here, and then he's over here. It's quick, and he moves.
Float like a butterfly.
No, I just, you know, you got to...
So what you're saying is that you want to, instead of having the Windows tip at the end of the show, as we have been doing, you want to start the show.
No. It'll be separate. There'll be a separate. There's going to be a tip. There'll always be a tip, a general tip, but there's going to be a Windows 7 specific tip.
Feature of the week. We'll begin every show with a feature of the week. I'm okay. We're going to go to our scorer, the great John Williams, and have. Well, actually, you prefer the other guy, don't you?
The other guy,
Zimmer.
Hans Zimmer.
We're going to get Hans Zimmer to do it because we, you know, and we'll get you a special.
Zimmer can do it, but it has to sound like his 80s stuff. It has to have that like Moog synthesizer thing going, and
the old Zimmer, not the new Zimmer.
Yeah, not the new stuff.
And have a special fanfare,
right?
That indicates that this is now. I believe we have it actually. I think that we commissioned this for another show, but just see if it works for you. It's time for the official Windows 7 feature of the week.
I like it. It sounds like something that was in a Warner Brothers cartoon in the 1940s. I think it might have been,
actually. Well, I could do. We have many. We could do another. How about this? The Windows 7 feature of the week.
That's good.
Kind of has a golf swing thing going with
it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that works.
Is it too dramatic?
No. This is the dramatic feature.
Okay, that's good. And now, the Windows 7 feature of the week.
You know what I should do, too? Let me grab this. A reading.
Dramatic reading.
From the good book.
The Windows 7 secrets. Yes.
Chapter 5, maybe? Yes, it is Chapter 5. Look how well I know my own book.
Wow, I'm impressed.
Where's my stuff?
This is the feature is Where's My Stuff?
No, that's the name of the chapter. The feature is called Libraries.
I love libraries.
Right. I don't think people understand libraries and how they work and all that, but it's interesting that this came up this very week because I actually got 3 different emails from people asking the same essential question, which is, in previous versions of Windows, there used to be these methods documented where if you installed Windows, but you wanted to move all of your user data, hello, I'm from Massachusetts.
User data.
User data from, sorry about that.
Andy was saying that the Apple iPad, people are going to go into Apple stores in Boston and they're going to say, I want an iPad, and they're going to get the iPod.
Oh, it's sad. Anyway, it comes out occasionally. I work to minimize that.
It's good. It's good.
Anywho, you want to move your user data, right, off of the system drive so that if you have to blow away the operating system and reinstall, it's on a different partition. And as it turns out, this is actually really hard to do in Windows. The method hasn't really changed. In fact, dating back many, many years, Windows 2000, XP, Vista, and Windows 7, basically, these methods are all still available. But because of this libraries feature in Windows 7, I actually don't think that most people need to do that anymore, because libraries are a new feature of Windows 7, virtual libraries. They replace the special shell folders that existed in previous versions of Windows, my documents, my pictures, and so on, with special folder-like UI elements that aggregate content from different locations. So, for example, there's a documents library in Windows 7 that essentially replaces My Documents. Now, there is, in fact, still a My Documents folder inside of your profile, and there's a public documents folder inside of the public profile. And those are the 2 locations that the documents library aggregates by default. But you can actually turn both of those off and have it just look at, the D drive, D:\documents. You can create all your folders on that second partition. Just have your libraries point to these other locations. It's not exactly the same, right? I understand that, as completely moving your user profile to a new location, because there is other hidden data that Microsoft and other companies hide inside of the profile. But I think for the average user, if what you're looking for is either a way to move that stuff off of the main drive and put it somewhere else, perhaps a second drive that has more storage or a faster drive or whatever it might be, or you just want to be able to also access information that's somewhere else. So, for example, I have a Windows Home Server device here that has a bunch of my videos up on the server. I don't want them on my PC, but it would be nice if I opened my videos library to access those, play them in whatever player I happen to use, share them with other people, and so on. And that's what libraries does, because you can add locations to the list of places that are aggregated by the library. You can remove some, so if you don't want public documents to be aggregated as part of your documents library, you can get rid of it. So solves a lot of problems, but the important thing to understand about virtual folders, about libraries, is that they're a replacement for shell folders, but also the central point for sharing content on a home network. So if you're using the home group feature, which we'll talk about on some future date, you can also share your libraries across a home network using yet another new Windows 7 feature. So it's a cool feature. I think it's misunderstood. You open up an Explorer window and you see folders that are very familiar, documents, music, pictures, and videos, and you think, well, this must be the same thing that's always been there. And I think that's the idea from Microsoft's standpoint. They don't want to confuse people, but the reality is these libraries are much more powerful than regular folders or those special shell folders that we used to have before, if that makes sense.
And I love them. But you're right, it's not immediately intuitive. In fact, what happens is I tend to do the things I used to do, move stuff instead of adding it to the public and that kind of thing. And so it does take a little bit of a kind of a re-education and rethinking how you use. But I think the libraries are brilliant. Now, if I delete a library, it doesn't delete anything. It's a search.
Delete a library. Well, yeah, but you wouldn't typically do that. And one thing I should also say is that
but I think if people think it's a folder, they might act the same way and say, "Oh,
sure. If you delete content that's in a library, it will delete that content."
Right. But if you're looking at the Explorer window, it says libraries, but it's where folders live, and it's where folders used to live. You might think, "Oh, I'm going to drag that."
Yeah. And they make it
and I'll
look
tell
like
you why
folder.
it came up for me.
Folder.
Yeah. Well, I had this folder full of porn, and it was in the libraries, and I just dragged it to the trash, and it's still there.
Yes.
Just a word of warning.
Sure. you people.
For whoever that might be of value to.
You can create your own libraries, too. I didn't actually do this for the book, but when Raphael and I were working on Windows 7 Secrets, one of the things you could do is create a book library and keep all of the contents of the book, all the files that are associated with the book inside of that library. That's one of the ways you can organize data. We'll talk about an application in a few minutes that actually does add a library to Windows 7, which is very interesting. And you can delete them, like you said. If you happen to create libraries that you don't want, you can delete them. One way I do use libraries in Windows 7 is I have an Apple TV out in my den, and I stream from iTunes on the PC. Now, the iTunes that's on my PC has some of my content. It happens to have all of my music in it, but it has some videos, but not all of them. But you can drag files in from anywhere. I happen to do it from the library, but I aggregate content from my Windows Home server, and then from there I drag it into iTunes. And so iTunes is actually seeing information that's on a network location and then streaming it out to the Apple TV, which can't see or can't easily see that network location. All kinds of different ways to use it.
I think it's one of the most useful and interesting new features in 7. I'm glad you kind of picked that one to start this new feature.
Yeah, and it's coincidental because, like I said, 3 different people wrote me this very week about this, moving the user profile issue, and this is something I may document at some point. It's documented elsewhere, but I just feel like it's a very complex way to do something that for normal people is a bit of overkill. That you can just use this library system to get the important data that you have off of your main drive if that's what you want.
You can put it anywhere.
You can do that with libraries.
And it just appears. It's just magical.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's great. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was our Windows 7 feature of the week. Now, that's a sting.
It's my favorite sound on earth.
Now, that is exactly what I'm talking about.
Let me tell you, here we are. It's, 2 months later. I'm not tired of that game at all. So let's talk about it for 40 minutes, shall we?
Okay.
Just kidding.
Now you've probably been through it on all the levels and all the campaign stuff and all that, right? You're now multiplayer entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Item 2. Wait a minute, I'm out of order because that felt like a tip, but it wasn't. It was a feature. So let's talk about let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about Windows Home Server, the new version, Veil. I know you're a fan. And some rumors about the Zune. But before we do that, it's time for me to tell folks who are in the IT business of a great tool from the great people at Citrix. We talk all the time about GoToMeeting, GoToMyPC, but Citrix also does a tool that is designed for IT and support folks using the same remote access technology they're world famous for. It's called GoToAssist Express. I used its big brother GoToAssist for years on the screensavers, and I'm using GoToAssist Express right now. This is how I support my family, my mom, and so forth. I just fire up GoToAssist Express. She doesn't even need to install anything. I just send her a link. She goes there, and it starts the session, and now I can get into her computer, Windows or Mac. She uses a Mac. I could be on a Windows or Mac. It works great. It is very efficient and has some features designed for the IT pro. For instance, even though I started the session with her, you can do unattended sessions as well, which of course is really important for IT because we want to stay up late. Mom goes to bed early, so we can do the midnight session and fix that. It also allows you to do up to 8 sessions at the same time, which is really handy because you start a scan or an install or something on one machine. You don't want to have to sit around and play Halo while that's going on. I mean, you could, but maybe you'd like to get more done so you could have time to yourself. So you can start another session, up to 8 sessions at the same time. It's really a great product. I want everybody to take a look at it. In fact, here's a chance to try it free. Go to assist.com/Windows. GOTO assist.com/Windows. As usual, because it's from Citrix, it's 128-bit SSL encrypted, so it's secure. There has never been an exploit associated with any of this stuff. It's really, really effective. Also 24/7 support, should you need support with it. Diagnose the problem, fix the problem, all remotely. You even get an assay of what software is running, an operating system, programs, security software, so that's important too. I think you're going to like it. GoToAssist Express is available right now for free for the next 30 days. But you got to go there right now. Go to assist.com/Windows. We thank them so much for their support of Windows Weekly. I think this is the right crew for this product. I know a lot of you are in the support field, and this is something you're going to want to use.
We all are, aren't we?
Ultimately, yeah.
You know, if you're kind of a tech guy, you're kind of supporting your family.
They have a day pass too that you can use if you're not doing it all the time. You just want to use it once in a while. They have a day pass as well. That's really, really, really handy. Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? And my mom's in Rhode Island. What we should do is like a co-op, so that you could like help my mom and I'd help your mom. Is your mom out here in California?
No.
Okay, well just help my mom and
okay.
And I'll owe you.
Sure.
I'll owe you.
She has to be a little more savvy than my mom when it comes to computers.
Yeah, she's a pretty serious user. That's kind of neat. I mean,
my mother did just get a computer. I have to give her some credit.
Did you give her a netbook or?
No, she got my mother has vision issues, so she got an enormous computer. Yeah,
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Vail, are they naming WHS versions after ski resorts?
Yeah, Aspen was the previous.
Yeah.
Which one was Aspen? Aspen might have been Power Pack 2, one of the other updates. I can't remember, but it was Aspen and Vail, for a while were the next two big Windows Home Server updates. I was first briefed on Vail, I bet 2 years ago. It's been a long time.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, they've been talking about this for a long time. In fact,
is this really like the second edition? I mean,
yes. Well, in the sense that, the first version has undergone different updates. And, of course, the OEMs like HP have added their own updates to it. But it's based on Windows Server 2003. Now, this version is actually based on Windows Server 2008 R2. It's fully 64-bit. So it's a much more modern version of Windows and will utilize a lot of those capabilities that just weren't present, back in 2003. So significantly advanced. But it seems like it's taken kind of a long time to come to market. So I hadn't talked to those folks about Vail, like I said, probably a couple of years. So it's been a while, but a sort of a pre-beta, CTP, like a community technical preview version of Vail leaked this week. So I've downloaded it now. It's actually downloaded, and I will install it after the show, and we'll check it out. And Rafi and I are talking about doing a, one of our feature breakdown charts like we did for Windows 7 and Windows Vista, so we can, accurately portray what is in there or what's intended to be in there, because I'm sure some of it won't be exposed in the UI and all that. So soon we shall know. But right now it's a little bit mysterious, so we're not really sure what's in there yet. I can say the one thing I've heard is that there will be two different versions, a basic and a premium version. It's possible that a TV recording functionality will be part of the premium version.
So that instead of recording on your local computer using MCE,
you can do it at that central place. It's going to hold all your content anyway, right?
I like that idea.
Yeah, it makes sense. Although, this stuff is kind of squishy when you think about it because it's so complicated. And, HP has some software in their home server that does video file, I guess you would call it transcoding, so that you can more easily use it on, say, an iPod or an iPhone or something like that. And it's, it's kind of complex. It works, but it's a lot of stuff to be running up on a server, and it's not the type of thing, like my mother would be incapable of understanding the software. So getting something like those capabilities, but for a normal person, it's a tough thing to do. So we'll see how it evolves, I guess.
If you are using Windows Home Server right now, and I think everybody's using the HP pretty much, right?
I would think so.
Is it kind of like upgrading Windows, so that you would have to buy an upgrade, or is it like an update, or do you have to buy new hardware? How does that?
Well, I can't say yet. This is going to be a major update. So because this thing is sold only with new hardware, typically, you can, in fact, buy it at Newegg or whatever.
So you're not going to buy a disc and put it in and install it?
No, it's not like Windows where you go to a retail store and buy it.
So this would be it's almost a new version of it may even have hardware features that require a new version of hardware.
Absolutely.
But it couldn't then, because you couldn't.
They're going to position it. These are sold as appliances essentially. So the way they're going to position this is you buy a new one.
So how do you use the community preview? There must be some way of installing it, though.
Well, yeah, it's still an ISO, so you can install it in a virtual machine. You can install it on a PC. If you're an enthusiast, and I would say the market is probably split pretty evenly at this point between actual home users and then enthusiasts. And the enthusiasts are the type of people who would buy it from newegg.com or whatever and install it on their own PC type machine and use that as a server. And that's fine. That works fine. And you can do that with this version as well. You have to have a 64-bit processor, although, again, right now that's not exactly hard. So
right. No, everybody, I think, is 64-bit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, even I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I think that the HP machine has a GPU in it just to help it.
Really? For encoding,
I could be wrong about it. It might
For
just be using maybe it's using the dual core
Yeah.
nature of the CPU, but when you want to do video encoding and stuff, it actually helps to have that kind of stuff in there.
But you can, in fact, somebody just sent me a link to the Windows Home Server website. You can download a trial version. You can run on any PC or, as you said, in a virtual machine. So you can try it. You don't have to have the hardware.
Right.
But everybody seems to want the Media Smart. That seems to be the way to go.
It's so nice.
Yeah.
Well, we'll look for Veil then.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Home Server, but it's not just, hey, I really like this technology and I feel the need to talk about it. I use this
Oh, I know.
every day.
Yeah, no,
This
I know
is
you're a fan.
This is the center of my home network, so
Yeah.
it's a big deal for me.
An update to the Zune.
Yeah.
Gosh, I got to find my Zune HD. I'm so sad. I don't know. I think somebody lifted it.
No, that's too bad. Well, this is only for the Zune PC software, not the Zune device.
Oh.
And very mysterious.
So the Zune Marketplace is updated.
No, just the Zune, the PC software, the actual, media player software has been
I
updated.
confused the two. Okay.
Yeah. Well, there's all kinds of stuff. There's a Zune social,
Right.
kind of a social networking type of thing. There is the Zune Marketplace online store. That's sort of also available on the Xbox, but only for videos. There's the Zune devices, of course, and
then there's
Zune
this, and then this Zoom Pad. Let's not forget. That's so exciting.
The Zune, not yet. No. So, and the Zune Pass, which is, of course, the
Zoom Pass.
service.
Yes, and now I'm trying to decide because mine's running out, and do I? I bought I think 3 months at a time. Do I renew?
Yeah,
Hoping I'll find my Zune.
Sure. You can stream off of the Zune website, and you have full
Right.
access to all the songs.
Right. So maybe I'll just do that. Yeah.
Yeah, depending on how you use it. Anywho, over the weekend, Microsoft announced via a blog and I think also via email that all of the Zune services would be unavailable for 24 hours starting earlier this week.
I got that email. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were doing a maintenance upgrade, is what they called it, and no new features, no new anything to worry about. Just regularly scheduled maintenance.
Okay.
The thing is, after it came out of maintenance, if you loaded the Zune PC software, it said there was an update. So it went from version 4 to version 4.2. And there's a couple of new features in there, some of which are really interesting. But there's also something mysterious going on under the covers, which has raised a lot of questions online about what Microsoft is doing here. So the new features, for those who are curious, basically boil down to library support for Windows 7, meaning that in the past, every single version of the Zune software until version 4.2 utilized a monitored folders system, sort of like the Windows 7 libraries that we just talked about, except just specific to Zune. So it would look in whatever locations you configured, and it obviously would pre-configure its own. It would look for music and for videos and for photos and for podcasts. So now, starting with version 4.2, instead of doing that, they're actually using the libraries that are built into Windows 7 if you're running the software on Windows 7. Right, instead of reinventing the wheel, because this is now part of the underlying OS. What's interesting about that is that Windows 7 doesn't have a podcasts library, so how would it monitor for podcasts? And actually, when you install the software, it creates a podcast library.
Oh, cool.
In Windows 7, yeah, and it's got a cool little icon.
Thank you. Yeah,
really nice. So. I went in, and what's interesting is if from within the Zune software, if you try to configure those locations, because you can add and remove locations and determine what is the default location and all that stuff, you're actually affecting the underlying libraries in Windows 7. So you want to be careful about that, because the UI is a little different, and you may believe that all you're doing is changing how Zune works, but in fact, what you're doing is changing how Windows 7 works. So you want to be a little bit careful. I think that caught people by surprise. The thing that really bothers me about this is I went to Microsoft after the fact and I said, okay, so clearly you have created new features here. What else is hidden in there? And they had zero comment. They didn't want to talk.
So
Now,
what do you think?
Well, before we get to the mystery, there's also some support for new video formats. Now, they did say about a month ago, or a little bit less than a month ago, that new video support was coming. And the idea here is that Zune owners will be able to get video content from other locations other than just from the Zune Marketplace. So they're going to support AVI, MPEG-2, XVID, and
that's neat.
Possibly, who knows, maybe some other things. But again, they're not talking, so it's kind of hard to say. Now, I've heard from readers that AVI and XVID are both working right now.
Huh.
So apparently that was part of 4.2 as well.
Funny, because XVID was based on DivX. It's an open form of DivX, and DivX was based on Microsoft's MP4 implementation.
Yeah, very strange.
So it's come full circle.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, yeah. So there's that. Now, the other thing that happened, and this is the thing that generated the most news, I would say, is that Long Zhang, who's a blogger from Australia that I run into at a lot of these shows, and we've done some of the live, keynote coverage together and all that kind of stuff. He looked at the INF file for the installer and discovered that for the first time there were 3 new devices listed in the list of supported devices. Now, they're not named in any way; they just have GUID type codes associated with them, so it's impossible to say what they are. But for device type, previously all of the devices that would be supported by the Zune software were identified as device type Zune, but these 3 devices were identified as device type phone.
Whoa.
So he speculated that this must mean that the Zune phone, which is the sort of mythical and fabled, Windows mobile version that, looks and works like Zune HD.
Let's put it this way. It's no surprise it rhymes with unicorn.
Well, yeah. So he was saying, this might mean that this is real. Now, Tom Warren, who writes for NeoWin, actually asked Microsoft, is this real? Is this what this means? And Microsoft actually just came back and said, no, we have no plans to create a Zune phone.
Somebody was just messing with you.
Yeah. Well, they said what they said before. Someday the Zune software will probably be part of a phone experience. So, we haven't announced the specifics of that. And,
just in case we thought we'd use that name.
Yeah. So my speculation, and this is completely, again, speculation, is that Microsoft is going to be adding Zune software to Windows Mobile and their Danger phones. Oh. And that these 3
devices...
But
didn't they even already say that that's the new media player for everything?
Yeah, right. This media experience will be moved to all of their platforms.
So that makes perfect sense.
Perfect sense. Now, but the thing is, in the past, these 3 the devices that are listed in this INF file are very specific. They mean, the Zune HD or the Zune 80 or the Zune 120 or whatever. I'm speculating that these things, in fact, mean different kinds of Windows Mobile. That there's one device type for Windows Mobile Professional, one type for Windows Mobile Standard, and one type for Danger or something like that. And that, they will push the software to those devices, and that when you connect it to your PC, you'll be able to sync media using a really nice piece of software, which would be really cool. Now, I can't guarantee you that that's what's happening, but we do know that next month is Mobile World Congress. We know they're going to talk up Windows Mobile 7 for the first time. We know that there are going to be major updates to Windows Mobile 6.5 coming this spring. So it kind of makes sense that from a timing perspective, that if there's going to be something going on with the Zune with Windows Mobile, and again, I'm not saying there is, but speculating that there is, that this could be the start of that. So right now, we don't know. Again, speculation, but that's where we're heading.
We're pretty.
That's the thought.
Pretty. I mean, I seem.
Well, we have ideas. We have ideas.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've got ideas.
We can't say for sure, but
we just have a thought. I had a thought at some point.
Sure.
Moving along to our next item, Office 2010. I've been using the, what do they call it? Run it now, running in place.
Click to run.
Running with scissors. That's it.
Yes. Yeah, running with scissors.
The running with scissors version of Office 2010 for a while now. Like it. Love it. Very happy with it. And I guess we're getting closer to a release.
Yeah, I think they had said May 2010. Now, there are rumors starting that it could happen a lot more quickly than that.
That would be great.
That's fine. It seems like it's right there, right? I mean, I have never run into any issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. In many ways, it's like that Windows 7 beta where you kind of run the thing and you're like, wow, this looks like something they could just ship. It's nice. Now, I know there are some changes coming. There's some integration with the Skydrive stuff and so forth that's happening later on. So there will be changes. But, yeah, I mean, the current version is very, very usable. But the surprising thing here is as far as the system requirements go, I mean, this thing runs on a computer that was new in 2003. It's really kind of funny. It will work on very low-end machines. And one thing that they're not doing, like they do on the Windows side, is talking about recommended system requirements and minimum system requirements. They just have system requirements. So, and they're really low end. It's 500 megahertz processor, 256 megabytes of RAM, virtually any version of Windows that's supported. Actually, every single version of Windows that's currently supported.
That's not 98 though?
No, currently supported.
So that starts
XP and up.
XP and up. Okay.
Yeah.
2000. 2000's not supported anymore.
No. I think 2000 support is officially ending.
It's 10 years.
I think it's this July. I think it's July.
Okay.
I'd have to look that one up, but I think it is this year. It's ending. They have some GPU support for some of the graphical features, especially in PowerPoint and in Excel. But even that requirement, such as it is, if you have a netbook, any netbook class PC with an Atom processor, and it sucks a little bit of the RAM for the video, works fine, no problem. So it basically just works on everything.
Spartacus, I don't know if this, if he knows something or he read this somewhere, says that the RC has been released to employees at Microsoft.
Yeah.
Is that the case?
That's probably what, no, I think that's what touched off the rumors that May date is, in fact, pretty far out compared to where they're at.
Right. Yeah, if they're doing the RC. Wow, yeah.
Right.
Great.
Yep.
And last week we talked about smartphone
market share.
Market share.
Now, this is a correction.
And you shocked me.
I did. So actually, as it turns out, it's usage share, not market share, and it is skewed toward phones that can display ads in applications, which is how this data was derived. So I wanted to correct that because this arrived just as we were starting the podcast, and I thought it was really interesting data. I would just tell people that, I have in the past and will continue to rail against any use of the term market share to describe what is in fact market share, which is what you see, usage share, which is what you see a lot on the web. So a company will measure which browsers and which types of computers are hitting certain websites, and then they come up with these market share numbers. Those are not market share numbers. Market share is sales. I would, however, mention that when we talk about smartphones and what is a smartphone, what makes the smartphone a smartphone, what we're talking about is a device that has all that, PIM and email functionality, of course, but also I think it involves such things as having an app store and a viable selection of apps, having a platform with an SDK that developers can build on and all that kind of stuff. So I think that this data is still very interesting because it measures modern smartphones and how they're really being used around the world. And it's not market share, but I do still think that the data is important and points to how people are actually using them. So and points to what people are in fact actually using out in the real world. So there you go.
I just want you to notice that I'm holding my tongue.
What's up?
No, I'm not. I'm going to honor your embargo. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, you found it.
Yeah.
I told you would have a happy little surprise.
Yeah.
I'm honoring your embargo.
But I do, yesterday at the event, Jobs did mention, he did an interesting trick.
You're not said, when you talk anything. What are you doing?
When you talk, I didn't say the I word.
No, hold that one. Hold it, because I know what you want to talk about, and I do want to talk. I want to talk about that exact thing.
I got hold of it right now.
Hold on to that one, because I do want to talk about
it. It is related.
Jeez.
Okay.
Wow. This week on Tech with Skippy.
I'm holding my tongue. It's hard to talk when you're holding your tongue. That's all I can say.
That's why people don't do that, Liam.
That's why in polite society it's considered uncool.
Oh.
Let us talk about our Audible pick of the week, and then we will get your multifarious tips.
It's tips and
software.
Picks all over the place. I know it's like it's a piñata.
It is, and it's about to explode all over your portable player. But before we do that, I do want to mention our friends at Audible.com who do the great audio bookstore we've come to love. Both Paul and I are Audible fans and have been using Audible for some years. So we've collected a fairly large and eclectic collection of Audible books that we read and love. I'm listening to the very girly Marion Zimmer Bradley book.
Oh, which one?
The Mists of Avalon.
Oh, my God. That's like 30 years old.
Yeah, but I never read it, believe it or not, because I'm a big fan of Arthurian legend, King Arthur stuff. I love, that whole thing, Once and Future King and all that. And I didn't know that this really was that.
This is like chick sci-fi fantasy.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. There are no unicorns, but it's pretty damn close.
Right.
So, but I'm enjoying it. There's a lot of. He took
getting in touch with your feminine side.
He took her in his muscular arms.
Sure.
She'd never before felt anything quite so manly. His magic wand burst into flame. But there's other stuff, let me tell you, on Audible.com. There is actually a whole romance selection. So if you are a fan of romance...
it turns out they have books for dudes, too.
But they also have science and technology, manly topics like sci-fi. They have books for kids, book for teens, education, fiction and nonfiction, thrillers, mystery. It's a fantastic selection. So up to 70,000 titles now. And here's how you can get one for free. Go to audible.com/windows. You'll be signing up for the gold account. That's a book a month. And the first one's yours to keep. Even if you decide to cancel at any time, it's yours for free. So, you know, get an Audible book. And Paul, you have actually a recommendation that I can concur with. Although
finally,
finally something we agree on. Although I was going to, and I'll probably do this in some other shows, both Howard Zinn, the author of The People's History of the U.S., passed away today, and J.D. Salinger passed away at the age of, I think, 90-something. So I was gonna put some of those in our list, but you'll notice that I have, if you look at my library, I have just purchased 2 Daniel Suarez novels.
Nice.
And I'm pretty excited about them. I've never read any of his, and you're going to recommend the new one, right?
Brand new, right? So he's a new author, I believe. I want to say that his first book, Demon, spelled like Dame, like the Unix demon,
right?
We actually recommended it on this podcast a long time ago. I had to go back and look it up. It was March 2009.
Really?
And
interesting.
So I believe, I could be wrong, but I think he was a new author at the time, and a guy who came out of the tech industry, and it's kind of a tech thriller.
Yeah.
And, likened to Michael Crichton or even Neil Stephenson. And
I can't wait to read it. It's funny, I didn't realize I'd recommended it a year ago. And I'm just dying to read it. It's on my list, but it's, first I have to... First, he has to leave her.
It might be March. I think actually it was 2 years. I think it might actually
2
be.
years ago.
I think I have the date wrong. I think it's 2000.
Yeah.
Oh no, that is right.
I remember when I remember seeing it and thinking, oh, I've got to read this. This is cool. And then Tom Merritt, when we were at CES, said, "You've read Demon, right?"
Yeah.
I said,
yeah. It's sort of the new Neil Stephenson, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So this is a sequel to the first book. So if you haven't read Demon, you should grab that. But if you have, you should know that Freedom, and I believe it's actually Freedom
Trademark
with a trademark. I think that's how it's in fact written.
That's the title, Freedom Trademark.
Yeah, Freedom Trademark is the sequel to Demon, and it starts with the evil computer. From the first book is now running the world, and so it's I don't want to say Matrix-esque because that's not really the case, but it is a sort of dystopian future technology is evil kind of thing. So good stuff.
If I just, took a few days off, I could read both.
Yeah, you should.
I should just do that. Someday I'm just going to stay in my jammies and stay in bed all day and listen.
Yep.
And screw the podcasts. It's about time.
Wow.
No, I can't do that. I couldn't do that. I would be bored. Freedom, Daniel Suarez, I think a great recommendation. Now, normally this would be $30, but you can get it for free right now just by going to audible.com/windows. Add this book to your library, and Damon too, I think would be a good choice. Your pick. Did you read Demon?
Yeah. Yep.
So should you read them in order?
Oh yeah. No, you have to.
So read Demon first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So don't get Freedom unless you've read Demon, and if you have, then Freedom Trademark is our book of the week.
That's right.
Audible.com/windows. Plays on your Zune, plays on your iPod, iPhone, other devices yet to be named by Apple. Plays on your Kindle. In fact, there's a whole, if you go to the device...
I've never tried that, playing it on the Kindle.
I was hoping, and I'm still waiting, because, Amazon bought Audible about a year ago. And I was really thinking this is a chance for Amazon to integrate Audible really well into the Kindle so that as you listen... If you have the book,
you read along.
It would read along, or it would highlight the words, or even better, and I think they would have to change the Audible format to do this. It would jump to that point when you open it up in the Kindle, so you could.
I would love that.
Wouldn't that be great? So you could do both.
Yep.
And they'd sell twice as many books because I often buy the print version of a book I've listened to because I love it so much I want to have it on my shelf. They'd sell twice as many.
Oh, that would be neat.
Jeff Bezos, I'm talking to you. Audible.com. I bet you that's in the works.
You do have some competition now. You might want to just, think about it.
What are you talking about?
I don't know. I just talk sometimes.
Audible. Do you know how hard this is for me?
I know. You're like a child on Christmas Eve.
Audible.com/Windows. Try it today. I can't do it. I cannot talk and hold my tongue at the same time. I've tried.
This has been proven before.
It does not work.
It's not new information.
Our tip of the week, Mr. Thurrott.
Yes, sir. Get a lot of questions about accessing Skydrive from Windows Explorer. And, there are no great ways to do it, unfortunately. We've talked in the past about some of the add-on tools, Skydrive Explorer.
They're going to do this eventually.
Yeah, they are. In fact, I had the weirdest briefing with the Windows Live guys recently, and I can't really discuss it too much, but I would just say that there are things coming down the road.
Oh, good.
And so across a variety of things.
Of course, there are.
So
yeah.
I guess the simple way to describe the veil of silence that has descended over Windows Live is just to remind people that, at Microsoft, Windows 7 was such a success story that other teams at Microsoft are now emulating the way that they released that OS by not talking about anything until they're ready and positive that what they talk about is what's going to happen in the product. So, previous versions of Windows Live, months before the product shipped, they would come out and talk to press, and it would be previews and discussions about what was going to happen. This time, they're not doing that. So whenever the Windows Live and whatever else is upgraded is announced, it will be very close to the actual release, so they're doing it a little bit differently.
But
in the meantime,
interesting.
Yes. In the meantime, Skydrive is free. It has 25 gigs of storage. I mean, how awesome would it be if there was some easy way to connect to that? Now, this particular tip, unfortunately, I've gotten a couple of links from different people. This one comes from Raphael. That's in the show notes. Now, rather than describe it, what I'm going to say is there are various ways to access Skydrive from Windows Explorer. If you visit my website before the end of the weekend, I will document them. And one of them involves mapping a network drive via a technology called WebDAV so that you can access your Windows Live, your Windows Live Skydrive folders, documents, pictures, whatever, slowly, but from Explorer, which is what you want.
WebDAV makes it possible for an HTTP-based file server to show up as a drive, to map to a drive.
Now, the confusing thing here is we were talking about Office 2010 earlier, and Office 2010 includes some technology in it to connect to SkyDrive, because what they want to do in that product, of course, is allow you to save your documents up there and then access them from the Office web applications, which are not available, full-featured form yet to the public. So it's a little half-baked, and my belief, I could be wrong, but my belief is that currently installing the Office 2010 beta makes it harder, not impossible, but harder to do this connection between Windows Explorer and SkyDrive. So Raphael and I were kind of going back and forth on this before we started recording, and I'll see what he's come up with. He may release his own tool. I don't know what he's going to do yet.
Would be neat. So there is an interface, but it's just not published.
There are interfaces. So you can do it manually, and that's what I'll try to document on the site. You can do it through a third-party tool. We've actually recommended both of these in the past, SkyDrive Explorer and Gladinet, and both of those work. They both have some issues. They're not super simple to configure and set up and all that. But if you want to get access, easy access to that storage, I would say right now those two tools are probably your best bet. But if I can figure out a flawless way for this thing to work across all PCs, I will document how to do it manually. The problem is the data you have to enter into the string to get it to connect via WebDAV actually differs from user to user, and it's kind of complex. So there are ways to do it, and I hope to. I will before the end of the weekend. I will.
How significant is the risk that this, because it's undocumented, will not work at some point?
Well, the worst thing that could happen is you can't connect to it over Explorer. That doesn't mean that it's not available.
Get to it. You
can still through. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. as I alluded to, I think Microsoft will.
They've got to support that. Yeah, they've got to support that.
They'll make it easier.
And WebDev is the way to, I think is an easy way certainly to do it. It's an established open way to do that.
WebDev's been around forever. You know, it's kind of amazing that this hasn't happened yet.
Right.
There you go.
Right. So that's tip 1. You got another one, or no? You don't. I'm sorry.
Tip. No,
you have Windows 7 tip of the week.
I do.
Windows 7. Windows 7. Let's not
Windows
forget.
7 tip of the week.
Yeah.
This one comes from Stephen Holden. This is pretty cool, and especially if you're running Windows 7 Ultimate, but this would apply to anybody. So if you run Windows Update, and I will run it right now so I can look at it and see what's there. One of the things that you will see is it may say optional updates are available. Now, under optional updates, if you're running Windows 7 Ultimate, what you're going to see is a bunch of language packs, which, you know, you probably don't want. They're humongous. They take a long time to install. And if you don't need them, you know, what the heck? The thing is, you can actually right-click on an update and choose Hide Update, and then you will never be reminded about that update again. So one of the things, and I still do this, it's so silly, but I will run Windows Update, and it says, oh, optional updates are available. And I click on it, and it's a bunch of language packs, you know, which is a little aggravating. So you can, there's no easy way to do this. I'm going to ensure that that is the case. Yeah. You can't do this as a group. In other words, I can't check the entire list, right-click one of them and say hide update. You literally, unfortunately, have to right-click each one in turn and say hide update. But once you do that, it becomes grayed out, and then it goes away. And now, you know, and now it won't show up anymore. And if you do want to restore a hidden update, there's actually a link for that right on the left side. It says restore hidden updates. And that will give you a list of the ones that you've hidden, and you can check them to enable them if you'd like.
Very good. And I do that because there's some things I just don't want.
Right. And language packs would be a great
really good example, yeah. Now we have we had 2 tips, actually really 3 if you include the Windows 7 feature at the beginning of every show.
Mm-hmm.
But now we have 2 software picks of the week, too. You are just a bonanza.
I had 3 originally. So
wow. You know,
yeah,
there's going to be another show next week. Don't you know, save some powder.
Well, you know, this is just like the news. I can't help it when stuff happens.
I know.
You know, so
no, you don't. And we don't come from scarcity here. We know there'll always be another tip.
Sure. I mean, this stuff, right. But sometimes there's just a bunch of stuff, so that's the way it works out. The first of the 2 software picks of the week is, I assume it's pronounced Ease Us To-Do Backup. And this is from Matt Reeves via email. And what this is a total PC backup. It's completely free.
Is it like an image backup or what?
That's the thing. It does complete system backup, which is amazing. And it has a bunch of other great features like the ability to clone disks and, you know, mount backup images as drives so you can get in there and particular files out. And
that's key. Can you boot from a backup image?
Yeah, you got to look at the list. So if you on that page you're on, if you look at the left, it says features and then more.
Right. Let's look at all the features.
More and
this is at todo-backup.com.
Yeah, they're a pretty impressive looking product.
It'll create a bootable CD and restore when there's a boot failure.
Yeah.
Or works with WinPE to make a bootable CD. Split the image file. Oh, this is incredible. Backup system partition to an image, restore system partition from bootable CD.
Yep.
Compress image file. Oh, this looks really good. So have you played with it?
Yeah. I haven't done any. I haven't actually restored off of it, but it is. And
it supports Windows 7.
It supports Windows 7. Yeah.
Terrible name, and that's why nobody's ever heard of Easiest.
I've never heard of it, but it looks fantastic. It's a surprisingly full-featured, and you know, again, it's for a free product. Oh my God, it's crazy.
Is it freemium? I mean, is there like a paid version?
They do have different, and they have other products and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so it's a come on for their other stuff, but that's great. I love seeing that. It's great.
So the second one is Chrome 4.0, which was just released in final form this week. I'm on the beta path, I guess, for Chrome. That's one of the options you have. In fact, I think you can go in and configure it to also do the dev path.
Right. There's 3 different ones, yeah.
Yeah, even more. But if you're on the normal public, the normal version, I guess we would call it, of Chrome, like Firefox, they just released a pretty decent update, and version 4.0 is out. And this is the one that comes with all those extensions, and is the one I think that really puts Chrome over the top. Because
in fact, I think they're saying it's not out of beta, but this is like like real now or something, right? It's no longer.
It's right. So in other words, I guess the way to say it is it's in the public, the normal public download. So if you were previously running 3 point whatever, you will automatically be updated to this version. So it's
awesome.
It's on the mainstream Chrome path. If you just go to chrome.google.com, this is the version you'll get now. And I really have to say, the extensions, like I said, it puts Chrome over the top. It's always been super fast, and the performance is amazing. But with the extensions, you get a lot of you have a choice of add-ons that you can throw in there, and it's just a nice thing. So definitely something worth checking out.
Well, it's been a great episode. 2 software picks, 2 tips, a feature of the week. We've covered all the big stories associated with Microsoft. I think there's nothing really more to talk about except to say thank you, Paul, and
sure,
and so long.
And if you were upset by all of the Apple talk last week, this is
the show for you.
This is the point at which you can just turn it off.
Tune out. We're done. Okay, and so and thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Windows Weekly.
Now let's talk about that piece of crap that Apple released this week, shall we?
Whoa! Those are strong words. You're calling it a piece of crap?
No, that's not fair. Obviously, Apple makes good products.
You're going to buy one. You know you are.
Of course I am, but I'm not a normal person.
Okay, let's say you're a normal person.
Yeah.
Would you buy one?
Actually, I would.
Yes, I know you would.
No, but hold on.
Okay.
We talked about this. I have not a need, because nobody needs this thing, but a want.
Exactly.
Or a device that has a bigger screen than an iPod that I can use on a plane to watch movies.
It doesn't matter if it's a need or want. Apple gets your $500 either way.
Sure.
So you can say it's a piece of crap.
But can I recommend this to other people? The issue is even the original iPhone, as horrible as the experience was for Windows users when it first came out, it was such a trend-setting device.
Right.
That it actually warranted changing how you do everything, because continues to be amazing.
And now that you've changed everything, you might as well stay in the Apple universe.
Possibly. Let's not get crazy, okay? What you said, that's insane. But anyway, I also get the allure of MacBook computers, or Macs, I guess. They're well-made, they're beautiful, etc. They're expensive, but, people get a certain perception of quality out of those, and they certainly appears to build up their, their self-worth, whatever it is. That's fine. We need computers, regardless of which computer you use. Arguably, we all need computers. But the problem for this device is that it's not a necessity. It's a weird between device.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it's something different.
Well,
and I think that's really
it's
why
not something different. It's not that it's different. I'm okay with the different. It's just that there is no future where this becomes a necessity, right? I mean, we've talked a lot on this podcast about these other devices, smart books, netbooks, and
right. This is the smart book, really, right?
This is really an alternative to a smart book because it's a PC form factor, but running a smartphone OS, right? It's been done before, by the way. Arcos has an Android-based tablet, and there's nothing. I think the issue I have with it is when we talked about this before, we were trying to figure out. What Apple must have something up its sleeve, Right. There's going to be some hidden feature or functionality, whatever it is, that we have not anticipated, and that will justify all the excitement. But the thing that they have shipped is, in fact, exactly what we all could have anticipated, and nothing more. And it doesn't do anything that other devices don't already do. In fact, I would argue, as a single device, there are already other devices that do everything that it does. If all you want is access to the iTunes Store content, you can get that from any netbook, and you can run iTunes, and it works fine.
Right.
So
maybe not the iBook Store. We don't know yet if that's going to be.
Oh, okay. But if they restrict that to the tablet, that's an artificial restriction. And by the way, if you don't have access to that,
there's plenty of other ways to get a.
Well, what about Kindle for the PC, which is wonderful.
EPUB, right.
Yeah. So I guess that's my problem. People have agreed and disagreed with me. The people who have disagreed with me, kind of Apple guys, obviously, I think are missing the point, which is this. As far as my reaction to this, I actually have very high expectations of what Apple does and what they are possible of. That's a good sentence. Or what they are
capable
what they could possibly capable of. Thank you.
Yes, I think that's the word.
First day with the new English language.
Yeah, I understand.
And this doesn't. beat expectations like so much of their products do. And yesterday, when you and I talked briefly on, I don't know what that was, when Mac Break Weekly or whatever, you know, I mentioned that there's just no surprise here, you know, that there's
yeah,
no
but you know,
sense
I think there's a lot of people who kind of, because first of all, Apple said nothing, right?
Yeah.
So there was this whole flurry of coverage for the last month or two or a year that was completely
as if I mean, think about it. I mean, how much of a brain in your head do you have to have? It's a tablet,
right?
I mean, what could it be?
So you can't really fault Apple for people's inflated expectations. That, I mean, they may have maybe they should have damped it down.
Actually, I don't know. I know why you say that, but Apple very much orchestrates.
So you think they did stir it up? Yeah.
What I think is they could have just come out at any time and said, "Look, this is what we're doing." You know, unfortunately, you sort of live by the sword and you die by the sword. You know, Apple is an event marketing company. They rely on these events and the build-up and the excitement, and unfortunately for them, every once in a while, they just don't meet.
Right.
You know, the excitement.
Right. And I think there's a very good recent example, which is Apple TV.
Well, yeah, and we talked about Apple TV last night too.
Which I love, you love, you still use,
I still use it. I recommend it.
There's no question it's
a flop. It hasn't done well in a market, but when you think about the world and the way that we interact with media and with content and with computing services and so forth, I would argue that, and I do argue, that the Apple TV, without the benefit of hindsight, without being a Monday morning quarterback, if you were to say, okay, Apple can make two products. One is yet another portable device that doesn't actually do anything unique compared to the other ones, but it kind of sits in the middle. Or we could do this brand new business where we're in the living room. And God, how many screens do these people sell every year? And how huge would this be if we could determine which content is coming into people's living rooms? Which of those sounds like the bigger market, you know, the better market? It's the Apple TV. Yeah. It just is.
Ironically.
And
you'd be wrong.
Would be wrong. Well, actually, we don't know if we're wrong, so we'll see how the iPad does. But they've done both now, so I guess now we will see. And you know, I'm
gonna make a prediction that this will sell 5 million units in its first year easily.
Okay, so I don't know. I don't have any opinion on that. I would just say that, you know, the iPod was an expensive luxury too. You know, for many years, when the iPod was just coming out, you know, there was an iPod, and then the different, you know, size. They had the iPod Mini, and you know, they kind of went and went and went. I sort of describe the iPod as an expensive. I'm sorry, not as an expensive, sort of an inexpensive luxury. You know, there were a lot of people who looked up to Apple products and wanted to buy a Mac but couldn't afford them. But here's this iPod thing, and it's like, well, I can't afford $1,500 for a computer, but I can spend $200 or $300 on an iPod. And of course, you know, they do that, and they sold millions and millions and millions, and then people enjoyed the experience, and they sort of look up the chain, and sometimes they buy Macs, and sometimes they buy other Apple products, and so on. There's no doubt that. You know, the iPad, by being just above the iPod, yeah, it becomes aspirational. You know, I'm already spending $300 in an iPod Touch. I mean, why not spend $500 and get this bigger screen? And, you know, there are things it doesn't do. You can't use it at the gym, probably, unless you're going to watch a movie on an elliptical trainer or whatever. You know, you're not going to strap the thing to your arm. So it's a particular kind of device. It does happen to satisfy a want that I have, like I said, for portable video, although the storage space in that thing is abysmal, and that's too bad. You know, it's too bad there wasn't a hard drive version, right? You know, they're very taken with form over function. A device that was 3/4 of an inch thick and only had 8 hours of battery life, but had, actually they could have fit a bigger battery too, but, you know, had a hard drive in it, would have been great. You know, my netbook has a 250 gigabyte hard drive. The most storage you can get on one of these things is 64 gigabytes, and that thing cost $899 or.
Yeah, no. It's $700, and then if you want the 3G, it's $829.
$829. Yeah.
If with 3G. See, I think most of the complaints people have. There's two. Well, first of all, there's this one group of people who just hate it because it's Apple. And are just thrilled to jump on it. And you're not that group, and I know that.
That's not me. And there are people who believe that, and that's not the case.
Yeah. There's a second group that is probably more Apple lovers than not, who are disappointed because there was such overblown expectations. It was going to have a front-facing camera and Minority Report gestures and all sorts of stuff. And I take a lot of blame for all of that speculation.
As you should. In fact, I blamed you.
We indulged in that. And then there's a third group, and you're in this group, and I would argue with this group that's comparing it to what's existing products and saying, well, but I can buy a netbook that does more. And I don't think that. I think that.
Well, you have to understand, but that is how this thing competes. In other words, he didn't create a new demand for something new.
Well, I think that's the big question mark. I don't think it'll succeed. I think you're exactly right. If that's all it is, if it's going to be set side by side, and somebody goes in and says, "I'm here to buy a laptop," they're not going to buy this thing. I think that there is it's possible. We don't know until it actually gets on the market, but I think it's possible there's a category that has not existed before that is, in fact, I think there's a huge demand for that will surprise you.
I think this category already existed, and I just think it's their entry. They can't build a $500 computer that's not a piece of junk, but they can apparently build a $500 sort of computer.
It doesn't do much.
Doesn't do much. Okay, fine. No, that's fine. And we've had conversations in the past about the, when you start over like this and you approach it from sort of a cloud computing standpoint, and you can do simplified interfaces and all that, and bravo. But I think there is a weirdness to. There's a little version of Safari. There's a middle version of Safari.
Right.
They have created a weird hole for themselves where we're going to put iWork on this thing, and we're going to have iPhoto on this, but not on that, and we're going to it's a dicey thing that they're doing. I think you were going to mention earlier the slide where they put up a picture of the iPhone, the iPad, and the MacBook, and they said we are now
#1 in mobile.
#1 in mobile devices. This sort of nebulous, like we make computers,
right?
We make smartphones, and now we make this other thing.
If you count it just right, we're bigger than Nokia.
Now we are #1. And that's cute. But the Mac still represents 3.82% of the worldwide PC market as of the fourth quarter of last year. The iPhone does tremendously well in the United States, but by the way, it's not #1 here, and it's not even close to #1 anywhere else in the world. So they're big. They sell gajillions of things. My take on this is very simple. Apple makes money selling devices, and they said this Monday or Tuesday, whenever they did their earnings conference call. They're still basically breaking even on the iTunes store. They basically don't make money on that thing. It's not running in the red, but it's basically break even.
Right.
So the way that they make money is by offering conduits to the content that essentially other companies make.
Right.
Whether this content is
now, they may have to change that. I wouldn't be surprised if they change that. Notice, and I don't know where this came from, but I'm seeing people say $15 for a book as opposed to $10.
That does come from. Yeah, I want to talk about that in a minute. But if Apple has a successful model, but all the money they're making is from the devices, not from that store. So the way they make more money is to make another way for you to buy something that accesses that same content. Right. And that's what this is. And looked at in that way, we're talking about an e-commerce thing here. It's not it's like, how can we get these suckers to buy something else that will, give them access to the store, which, doesn't generate any money, but we could use that as the advertising point, Okay. So that's fine. We'll see. I'm eager to see one. I am obviously a fan of technology and gadgets and all that stuff, but I think we have to be careful about getting too excited about what is essentially the flavor of the week. And, we'll see. I also think, by the way, they made an interesting and calculated move by pre-announcing this and not allowing people to pre-order it on day one. There are a lot of people who caught up in the moment.
They should buy it. Yeah, sell it now before anybody wakes up.
Done. I'm telling you, that morning after thing's going to kick in, and people are going to start thinking about it. And I don't know.
I can't wait to buy one. I'll be honest with you, and I can and maybe I'm a small group, and I acknowledge that we won't know until first of all you've had it for a week or two or a month.
Yeah, you need to spend some time.
Maybe I'm a small group, but I can imagine a use case for me that is that I'm dying to fill. So unless people see a use case for it, you're absolutely right. I've purchased several netbooks, and I keep thinking this is the use case for them, and it hasn't quite worked out. Which is, I'm lying in bed. I don't want to use a laptop, but I want to maybe look at the email, check my Twitter, maybe tweet, maybe watch a movie
you
or
understand
TV or
they
read a book.
have convertible laptop netbooks.
Yeah, and they're too complex, big, and heavy. They do more, and I don't need all that functionality. I just need a few things. I want to get up in the morning, and I want to go to the breakfast table, read the New York Times. Okay. Same thing. So, and I want to then put it in my car. It's got my audiobooks on it. I'm going to listen on the way in. I can see a use case for me.
Okay. I think that the market for people who can handle 3 different user interfaces for all that stuff is kind of small because these people still are going to have phones.
Phone's too small. And by the way, I spent a lot of time in bed with my Nexus.
In other words, but they still have the phone.
Yeah,
still
and
have a phone.
doing one of the reasons I see a use case.
I'm saying you have both.
Right. One of the reasons I see a use case is because I have the Nexus One, and that's kind of how I use it. But it's just a little. It's a little small. I'd like a bigger
screen. Small for reading, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about it. It's nice in a pinch, but you're not going to read a book on the thing.
So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Is look, there are people using an iPod this way, an iPod Touch this way, or an iPhone, or a Nexus One, and I think that the bigger screen alone might be all that's required to make that something appealing.
I don't know.
I still think I don't know either. No one knows. We'll find out.
As far as I'm concerned, the Kindle library, which is impressive and fantastic, and the reading quality in Kindle, which is just unsurpassed, makes that platform very, very interesting to me. And as far as color goes, the thing, if people aren't aware of this, any book that has pictures in it on the Kindle has color. You just don't see it on that device. But if you read that book on a PC or on your iPhone, you'll see that those photographs are indeed in color. So as time progresses and they come out with a color version of the Kindle, which of course they will, that color comes through. You don't have to rebuy content or.
I actually wonder if Amazon will at this point abandon the Kindle.
Wow.
Well, I mean, what do they did the Kindle not because they want to sell Kindles. Maybe they do, but because they want to sell books, right?
No. Look. Supposedly the Kindle's selling great, although in a very cagey fashion.
They don't say what that means. Yeah,
how many that means. I think that they will have a Kindle app on that device, obviously. They will have one on a BlackBerry and on the Android and all that stuff. They're going to hit all the major high points. So there's no worries there. I mean, however you want to do it. The New York Times, you can subscribe to the New York Times Reader right now. And it works great on a netbook. It works great on a tablet PC. You can get the New York Times for free on your phone. I'm not saying it's the greatest experience, but it's better than nothing. So there are already different ways to do this. I've been reading the New York Times on the Kindle since the first day that my Kindle arrived. It was the first thing I subscribed to, and I've read it every single day since. When we go to Europe, I actually subscribe to the New York Times Reader, and I read it on a PC because it's a little easier. Because in Europe on the Kindle I would have to download the file to my PC first, transfer it over a cable. It's a little more ponderous, so that's how I do it. But it's amusing to me that people watching the demos of all those software applications, I think a lot of them actually assume this is the first time this stuff had ever happened. People are looking at the New York Times thing and they're like, "Oh my God, it looks just like the newspaper." Yeah, and it looked just like that on the PC 3 years ago when they came out with the New York Times Reader. It's amazing to me how people covering this event don't even know, that this stuff has been around for a while. Oh, well, look at that thing. It looks just like a book. It's really cool. No, it's really not. So I don't know. I mean, Steve Jobs was the guy who infamously said people don't read anymore. And
I think he made a good point, which is you don't create just a book reader, and this is not just a book reader. Some people read, but he said not enough people read to make it a product.
All right. Well, as far as I'm concerned, like I said, I would, if I have both of these in my bag on a trip, and I will, when I want to read, I'm going to read on the Kindle. No doubt about it.
Well, I think we don't know that because you haven't sat there with that device and looked at it. How do you know? People say that, but I don't understand how you would know that.
Because I've read on a tablet PC, and I've read on a computer screen, and I prefer it on the Kindle.
Oh, all right.
I do know. I mean, it's not a
I've held it
display.
and read with it. I mean, I haven't read with it forever. It's 112 DPI, which is much higher resolution than the displays you've been using.
Okay, but it's still backlit.
It's backlit with LED, yeah. It looks, I'm telling you, very solid, crystal clear. I would be much happier reading on it, I think. But I didn't spend an hour with it. But I spent 15 minutes with it, and I absolutely looked at books on it, and it looked great. And I can't wait to read on it, but...
Okay, but I think there's, there have been complaints about missing features and so forth. And I think one of the, it's so funny on the Apple side, for people who are big fans of Apple have a very funny way of being very accepting of what they don't give you because Apple knows best, So the lack of, things like multitasking and a camera. And,
I think those are both very reasonable. And a lot of people didn't like that. And I agree with them. It'd be nice to have those.
I've been, again, amused just to watch some of the, well, we don't need cameras. It's fine,
Well, I mean, I'd buy it without a camera. It'd be nice if it had a camera. I think the bigger one is multitasking because it makes sense in a phone not to have multitasking. It doesn't make sense in something bigger with more memory and more horsepower.
Well, how about a tablet device that doesn't have a pen or any handwriting recognition?
Oh, I can. Screw that. That's the worst. You really want a pen and handwriting recognition?
I think a lot. Well, no, I don't. But I think a lot of people would like to take notes on a tablet.
Well, it's just not. This is not for them. It doesn't mean that this is going to replace everything that's out there. I think
like that was the point of it.
No, and I think that's the argument people make about it. Well, is there's better for different use cases? There are better products.
What you're saying right now is what I just said. In other words, when version 2.0 comes out with a pen and a handwriting ability, be like, oh yeah, this is exactly what we need now. If you're on the PC world and you're using a tablet, one of the coolest applications you can use is OneNote, and one of the things it does is handwriting, and it's fantastic. And I don't happen to have good handwriting. I happen to type very fast, so it's not the type of app that I would use for taking notes, with handwriting. But for a lot of students and for a lot of other people, that is, in fact, something they would want to use. And I get it. I mean,
that's why so many Windows tablets have been sold to date.
Well, more than have been sold iPads.
Well, so I guess, that's a safe bet. Let's talk in a year. Okay.
All right. Well, we'll see. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, the real truth is we don't know if it's going to find a market.
Let me throw you a statistic, and this is off the top of my head, so I'm not going to get this right. But when Microsoft had their Office 2010 Reviewers Workshop, one of the things that they discussed was which are the most popular Office applications. And obviously, number one is Outlook, as far as actual usage. Like
that's what everybody uses.
We have measured how people use computers.
Yep.
And Outlook is number one. Word is number two. They're very close. PowerPoint and Excel are actually kind of neck and neck, which surprised them. But the up-and-comer, the one that's actually in the top 5 now, and they feel will sit next to Outlook as the number one most used Office application is, in fact, OneNote.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Number 5. So wait a minute. Let's see what number 5 would be after Outlook, Word, Excel,
PowerPoint,
OneNote. So it beat Access.
Beat everything else, whatever they are. It doesn't really matter. But it's not. No, it's not number 5 because there's nothing else. It's number 5 with a bullet. Like, in other words, the usage of this thing is going up dramatically. And the reason it's going up dramatically is because of students who use it at school.
Yeah, no, I like the product. I mean, but I use Evernote, which is just kind of another OneNote.
I'm just saying, but Microsoft's expectation based on trends is that this thing will eventually be tied for number 1 with Outlook. That this idea processor, as they call it, will be one of those things like Outlook that you just have open all day long. Anyway, whatever. There's nothing to stop anyone from coming up with a note-taker application for
nobody's an on-screen keyboard is not a long-term input device.
What about the keyboard dock thing?
That to me looks like a mistake. It looks like.
Did you see it? Did they have it out?
Yeah.
So is it the type of thing where you could actually, the table would rock and it would fall off the dock? Or?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it like that?
Yeah, it's really stupid.
And that's how it looks.
They had them locked down, so you couldn't tell if it would rock. They were actually glued to the table.
It looked dumb.
It's dumb.
I think something where the keyboard was separated would be okay.
I have to think some analysts said you've got to have a keyboard for this. It just doesn't make sense. It's not a keyboard device. That's trying to pigeonhole it into.
Except for one thing. But think about this:
laptop.
As someone who has to travel for work, if I didn't have to do a lot of the things I have to do, how nice would it be to travel with a 1.5-pound thing, a tablet, and a keyboard, wireless, whatever, and literally be able to take notes in a meeting and have that be what I carried around?
Yeah,
right?
Maybe. And certainly, I don't know why they didn't do they have a little Bluetooth keyboard. It's actually smaller than that dock. I don't know why they didn't.
I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe it does work with that. I'm not sure. It might work. It does.
People will come up with those stands. The stand will pop out and you can.
It's like everybody pointed out. It's just like that Palm thing that was a piece of crap.
Right, and I think I told you the story, but I tried to use that on a business trip, and I was flying home. Had it docked to the keyboard on the tray, typing away. I wrote I think 900 and something words of a 1,000-word story. Plane rocked. Little Palm device slipped out of the dock, and the whole thing froze up, and I lost everything. So I used it once, and then I gave up on it because that's completely unacceptable. And when I saw that thing, of course, that's what I thought of.
Yeah, no, I can't understand why they released that, but it's to me it looks like a check mark on a list that they had to, that they felt for some reason they had to fill. I mean, there's a lot of check marks missing. Things.
Yes, right.
It's odd that that's the one that they felt.
So, yeah, it was a curious addition.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. To me, this is a device. This is the digital picture frame of devices. You know, it's a simple thing that does a few things well. I think the reason they left out multitasking, not because I don't think it was because they wanted to. I think it's because it was purely economics. It needs to be the iPhone operating system.
By the way, it's possible that could even happen because it's pretty clear that you're looking at the next version of the iPhone OS right there, right? That's what it will look like. Those icons on the bottom are sitting in something that looks like the Mac OS 10 dock.
The icons. It was OS 3.2. It was the iPhone OS.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In other words,
with a little,
the iPhone will eventually have that OS. Right. So as the iPhone progresses, I think we can assume that it will get multitasking or some form of multitasking.
I can see why you don't put. In fact, using the Nexus One, it's really clear why multitasking might not be a great idea in a phone device. If phone has to be a phone first. And if multitasking has the phone broken because you've got 15 tasks going in the background.
No, but one of the functions of multitasking would be shutting down the applications that were least recently used as memory is needed.
Yeah, so the Nexus One doesn't do that. You end up running Task Killer. I do anyway, at least once a day.
It seems like it should. Are you sure it doesn't do it automatically?
No, in fact, what happens as you're going, I'll run it right now, is that applications you never even launched are running, and it's like, well, how did that? What?
Maybe it's anticipating what you want to do. It is Google, after all.
It's the strangest thing, and I think it kind of underscores why you don't have multitasking. I mean, there's stuff running here.
That's the task list.
This is the list of tasks it's running. I never launched WeatherBug, the MP3 store. So I kill these regularly. I'm killing apps. And so it kind of underscores why you might not want to put multitasking in a phone operating system. I do agree with you and everybody else that it should be in a tablet operating system, a pad, because you have the horsepower. Well, I think the reason they didn't is because it's so important for them to run iPhone apps. It needs to be. You've got this 140,000 app ecosystem. You've got to support it.
Yeah, it's going to work.
That's job one. That's more important than multitasking.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, multitasking would be nice. A camera would be nice. Doesn't mean there won't be an iPad 2.
They need to have a system where you have floating windows and you can move them around with some kind of a pointing device.
See, that's exactly, this is what I'm saying is, and in the early days of the GUI, there was you think this is a vicious fight. There was a vicious fight between, and this was at Xerox PARC, between people who said that windows should be overlapping, and people said, are you kidding? You're nuts to have hidden stuff behind it. It should be tiled. And this was a vicious battle that raged for years. There's still people probably who have scars from it. And, of course, overlapping Windows won. But you can make a case.
There's still people who are confused by things that are
exactly. My wife.
They really are, as years later, 35, 40 years later.
I swear to God, my wife, the other day, she said, there's something missing. I can't find it. And I minimized her email. And she said, what's that? I said, well, that's your desktop. She said, why is there a picture on there? What's that for us? I said, well, that's your desktop. She said, I've never seen that before. For a year, she's been using a laptop and has never seen the desktop. She said, what are those little...
something under there?
Yes. And she said, what are those little pictures on there? I said, those are all documents you've saved. She said, really? Now, she's an intelligent woman with a master's degree, but it underscores that what you and I take for granted and understand because we've been using it for years and it's intuitive to us is not necessarily.
I do understand the little pictures. I will give myself that much credit.
You get those, and I'm proud of you for understanding that. So I'm just saying that just because that's how we've done it always doesn't mean it's the best way, the natural way, the intuitive way.
Sure.
And I think there's room. Look, Apple this may be a stinker. I'm not ruling that out by any means.
I don't know. I take exception to the, people who've bet against Steve Jobs in the past have all been proven wrong. I mean, this guy's blown it too. And by the way, one of the slides he threw up there of that first PowerBook occurred when he wasn't running the company, and by the way, was making unbelievably expensive workstation computers and not a portable device to be found.
The next cube. That's a very good point.
So it's cute that he threw himself into that timeline, but I mean, the real predecessor of this in many ways, and of course Steve Jobs doesn't want to talk about this, is the Newton, John Scully's device. And people are like, oh, this is his legacy, like those people know anything about legacies. But I would be careful with that. I mean, his legacy is not this stupid little device. It's the stuff he's done. It's his legacy is, you don't even have to discuss it. He's Steve Jobs. I mean, obviously the guy has a legacy.
There are very few products, even the next cube that Jobs worked on, that were crappy.
Yeah.
He didn't work on the Newton.
We've talked about the mouse.
He's never gotten the mouse, I agree, and it's not a surprise that there's no mouse in sight on this. Although I have to say, this, to me, and this is one of the things that happens when you hold this thing, that you don't really get right away because the touch is too small a screen. You can see why touch and multi-touch works so well on a 10-inch screen, so beautifully that you don't need a mouse. It's just it is the most intuitive example of personal computing I've ever used. I mean, you just kind of go, oh yeah, of course. And
I'm okay with that. One of the things, I mean, it amuses me again to use that word that people have often talked about Mac OS X as being easy to use or intuitive, and I don't
so
feel
than Windows. No, it's the same as
Windows. I don't feel that it's either. I mean, things that you already know how to use are easy to use. That's fine, but in many ways, I mean, OS X is actually kind of Spartan looking. I don't think there are any helpful hints anywhere about what to do next. Right. But this thing, yes, it has the potential to be truly easy to use. Although, again, we are coming into it with an understanding and a background in how the iPod worked and the iPhone, iPod Touch. I mean,
he even made that point. He said 75 billion people know how to use this because they already have one.
So, and once you already know how to use it,
so we can't be the judge of that.
Yeah, but moving to the next step is easy.
That was kind of and I think that this is the thing that people hated me for saying the most. The most fanboy thing that they call me a fanboy that I said, which is this is the device that Apple's wanted to create all along. This is the device Jeff Raskin wanted to create when he thought of the Macintosh. He didn't want to have a mouse on the Macintosh. He wanted an appliance computer, and this is the technologies finally exist for Apple to do what I think Apple always wanted to do, which was an appliance computer.
To give Apple some credit, I mean, I will say, some of the things I think they got right on this device. Actually the wireless connection is pretty decent. I don't like that they divided it up into multiple models. There are actually 6 models, which is great.
That's surprising.
Crazy.
Apple doesn't usually do that. Yeah.
I wish Apple, and this is Steve Jobs. When I say Apple, it's really Steve Jobs, right? They have a kind of a design imperative that it's going to be a certain way and that no other way will be accepted. It's too bad that you couldn't insert an SD card or something that would have content on it.
That's another thing that's missing. They do have an SD card reader that docks. But it could easily have been added. Well, again, we don't know.
No,
presumably. I mean, they're putting them in $200 netbooks.
It's the way they are, So okay.
So you can buy a little docking connector that's an SD card reader.
Yeah, I wish that. I guess if I wish it was a little simpler. I mean, if there have to be 3 different sizes, from a storage perspective, I wish it was just 3G and Wi-Fi, and that's the way it was. I do like that they're offering pay-as-you-go 3G. And I know from having researched some of this recently on the PC, there are some pay-as-you-go options. Actually, the prices are reasonable for what you're getting. It's not bad. People are knocking AT&T. Apple went out of their way, and I knock them all the time. This is the kettle, calling the pot black here. But I also made the argument long ago that there's going to come an interesting point in time where the iPhone becomes available on Verizon or whatever, and suddenly it's not as good as people expected it to be. And what's going to have happened in the interim is AT&T, because they have the iPhone already, has now spent 2.5 years improving their network. And they will continue to do so because they have to match the incredible needs of the users of iPhones on their network. They may eventually prove themselves to be the right company to have the iPhone because they'll be the only ones that did all that work, to make this happen. So, we all kind of dump on AT&T. It's easy. They're an easy target, but clearly Apple is okay with them, and maybe that was the right choice too. Plus, you get the international compatibility and all that stuff.
Yeah, although it's with his weird micro SIMs that nobody uses in the U.S.
Yeah,
it's kind of this weird form factor.
Which is a cute way of sticking you with AT&T.
Isn't that clever? It's very clever, very sneaky.
Well, yeah, I think they like AT&T. As much as it might bug some of us. Like, it's pretty clear they have a good relationship. So who are we to say?
And AT&T likes them.
Yeah. Oh, clearly. Yeah.
You know, sure. I mean, who wouldn't? You got to think that AT&T gives Apple a lot of concessions, and it wasn't so hard for Steve to wander in and say, "Hey, hey guys."
Oh, and
no contract,
Steve Jobs,
month to month.
Right. Steve Jobs being Steve Jobs, I'm sure he still has a lot of animosity for every one of the other wireless carriers who all turned him down when he wanted to put their phone on those services.
Not to be underestimated.
And Singular at the time and AT&T now were the only ones who said yes.
Yeah. Paul Thurrott, you did very well. I didn't do so well, but you did very well at holding your tongue, keeping your peace, and by now all the Windows guys are long gone.
Long gone. It's you can hear crickets chirping.
There's nobody listening to this show.
The tumbleweed just flew by.
Always a pleasure. Next week, that's it. No more Apple stuff.
Yeah.
All Windows all the time. We're now done, thank God, with the speculation over the... By the way...
I know. I think that's the best part about this.
The one thing I think everybody agrees, the worst possible name they could have chosen.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
And this is obvious.
Of the terrible names that were thrown around, like iSlate and iTablet.
I hated anything with I. I thought, oh, there's
yeah. But I seriously, they were mocking videos about something called the iPad from years ago.
2 years ago in Mad TV, yeah.
I mean, it's just terrible. They had to have known what they were getting into.
Somebody pointed out that probably there were no women on the naming committee.
Well, I unfortunately, so Steve Jobs, genius, I get it. But I don't think there are people standing up to him.
No.
I think what we're getting here is...
This is Steve, unadulterated, pure Steve.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
He doesn't care. And, as Dave Weiner even pointed out, and Dave, by the way, hated the iPad. He said, I'm not going to rail on the name as bad as it is because you get used to the name. It becomes the name. Everybody hated iPod when it came out, too. And, in hindsight, iPod is a terrible name. So
it's still a terrible... Yeah, but we are used to it, like Pentium.
Yeah. Pentium, terrible name. But you just get used to it.
No one thinks anything of it now.
Right. It just gets in your head.
Yep.
When I named my daughter Buck, people thought that's not a good name. But now they're all used to it, and it's okay.
My last name is so terrible, as you know, and no one can ever spell it right. No one ever pronounces it right. I decided with my kids I would give them very simple names that no one could ever get wrong. And I blew it both times because my son's name is Mark, which can be spelled at least 2 different ways. And my daughter's name is Kelly, which can also be spelled at least 2 different ways. So I tried, but naming is hard.
It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult.
So now I just call them number 1 and number 2.
That's good. And I feel sorry for number 2, but that's life. Wasn't that what Charlie Chan, he would say number 1 son?
Yes.
Yeah, he couldn't remember the name either.
Or call him Mark and other Mark. Mark and girl Mark and little Mark.
I just named all my kids Ken Norton, and I'm happy.
Nice.
Paul, thank you so much. We will talk next week. Meanwhile, catch him at Supersite for Windows, winsupersite.com, and of course, Windows IT
You can find my latest iPad screeds throughout the week.
I want you to write an iPad screed a day for the next 60 days.
I'm going to write an iPad preview that I think people will find pretty even-handed, but
I think the truth is, first of all, it's you gotta wait till it comes out and try it for. And I only tried it for 15 minutes. I did love the form factor. There's something about it when you hold it in your hand that you go, oh well, I kind of get this idea. But you got to do it for a week and read books every night and all that stuff.
Well, actually use it in place of other stuff.
Yeah, see how it feels before we can make any reasonable.
And then I'll call it a piece of crap.
Then you can say whatever you want. I've already made a $100 bet with the chat room while we were talking. That within 1 year of its release, it will have sold 5 million units.
Okay.
That would be a significant success, by the way.
5 million.
I think it would be a significant... How many units for Apple TV? I think it's 6 million over 3 years.
I don't think they've ever said, have they?
I think it was 6 million over 3 years. 2 million a year. So I'm saying... so 5 million maybe isn't like a world beater, but it's,
Sure.
It's a good number. A goodly number.
All right.
And then somebody said, and 4.9 million on eBay the next week.
Well, the key here is going to be making new versions every 6 months that have more stuff, and that's going to cost people.
I think the next version will have a camera, and a lot of people will go, don't.
Yeah,
I think there's no doubt about that. I wouldn't count on a stylus and handwriting recognition.
I don't know, but he'll get up on stage one day and say, we heard from a lot of students, and They are a key demographic. I know. They weren't going to make an ebook reader, the big guy.
Get a laptop. You want that? Get a laptop.
Listen. This could replace their laptops.
See, that's the question: does Apple really think that, or does Apple? It's my opinion. It does not replace the laptop.
Don't get me wrong. The Mac is a strong business.
Yeah, they don't want to.
No, but come on. This other stuff. This is gangbusters. You know what they don't have for the Mac?
Stuff. You mean?
You know what they don't have for the Mac is an app store where you can go and download stuff right away, right? And they never will. It's just too much. This is I don't know. I look at this as the business of the future for this company. Not the iPad, but the whole ecosystem thing.
Yeah, you're probably right. And that's why they make this product. I mean, if you think of it that way, then that makes sense.
People loved it so much, we turned it into a laptop.
Yeah, it makes sense that you continue this product line because this is where you're making your money. This is where you're...
It would surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah. All right, Paul. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly.